Hi and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave and this is episode 1313B and today's date is June 22nd, 2017 and the title of the episode is Those in Government Just Revealed Their True Agenda. Let's get into the economic collapse, political and geopolitical news. Now, as we know, Trump and Paul Ryan, they were trying to push the American Health Care Act, and we see that everyone wants to rewrite healthcare. And we can see that the Senate, they said they were going to write their own healthcare bill, and they released it today. Majority Leader Mitch McConnell released the draft of the Senate's healthcare reform bill. And basically, they took what was already there, they massaged it, made it sound a lot better, and they made certain groups happy, other groups angry. And we can see right now that nobody liked the tax part of it, the penalty, as we should call it. So they got rid of that. And they did a lot of other things where they said, see, we have a better healthcare bill. Now, Rand Paul was out there, and he's saying that the current healthcare bill, well, it doesn't repeal Obamacare. It does not keep our promises to the American people. He says, I will oppose this new bill coming to the floor in its current form, but I remain open to negotiations. And we can see once again, these bills that all these government officials are coming up with, they're not a real benefit to the majority of the people. Yes, there are certain groups in there that, ooh, this is good for me, and then the rest of the people, well, this is not that great for me. Because what is happening here is all these government officials, they're writing it with the insurance companies. And the insurance companies, they have a certain agenda. And of course, it's not to help the everyday person. It's to make themselves more and more profitable. Once they see they're not profitable, what do? They back out of it. Now, they thought with Obamacare, they'd be very, very profitable because their, should I say, plan, their scheme was to push everyone into healthcare. That's why they had the penalty, because the insurance company said the only way we can make this work is we need everyone in and we need everyone paying, because once we start raising the premiums, what happens is we make a lot more money. We have these gigantic deductibles, and guess what? We don't have to pay out as much. This was their plan, but people realized that I can't afford this. The one thing they forgot was the economy was deteriorating at the same time, even though they were trying to convince us that the economy was doing well. And what happened was they realized a lot of people weren't going for it. They'd rather take the penalty. Well, it wasn't profitable for them, so they started to back out, saying this is not for us. We're losing money with this entire scheme. You know, the one that the insurance companies help write. Now they're moving on to a new version of this, and they just keep rewriting the same exact thing over and over and over, making it try to sound good to the people. How about if they take it, strip it down, and they do it and make it beneficial to the people and let the people decide, does this help all of us? And you will know right away, because when you have a good product, a good program, people will flock to it. People know when it's good or bad. And when it's bad, they stay away from it, just like Obamacare. Now, we see that Trump came out and he confirmed that he did not make tapes of his conversations with Comey. Now, what's very interesting about all this is he uses his words very carefully. And what he said was that he did not make tapes with Comey. He doesn't know if these recordings even exist. He does not have recordings, which means he didn't do it. Doesn't mean that someone else did it. And this is what he said when Comey was out there testifying in front of Congress. I think Trump used this to kind of force Comey into saying that he wasn't under investigation and tried to keep him on track on telling the truth. And when Trump was out there, he didn't say that he had the tapes. He didn't say that I'm going to present the tapes. He says, I hope there weren't tapes made of our conversation. Here is the tweet that Trump used. James Comey better hope that there are no tapes of our conversations before he starts leaking to the press. Now, he didn't say that he made the tapes. He said he hopes that there are no tapes of the conversation. Now, everyone read into this and they believed that he made the tapes of the conversation. Now, we know there are recordings of the conversation because we know for a fact that the NSA is spying. Trump knows this. He knows that all these conversations are being recorded. And we can see that he uses these words and he plays on these words to basically play with the corporate media and to play with others. And you can see this is what he's been doing. And at this point, he's saying, listen, I don't have the tapes. I never made recordings. He never said he did. But it looks like he used this to his advantage. Now, James Comey, the FBI, they are being sued. And the plaintiffs are Dennis Montgomery, a whistleblower who worked as a contractor for the National Security Agency, the Central Intelligence Agency, and the Director of the National Intelligence. His lawyer is Larry Klayman of Freedom Watch. They filed in U.S. District Court in Washington a motion for a temporary restraining order and a preliminary injunction. They are asking the court to prevent the defendants, including Comey, the FBI, and other federal officials, mostly under the Obama administration, from continuing illegally and unconstitutionally spying on and surveilling millions of Americans, including plaintiffs, without probable cause or warrant. Secondly, they are asking the court to prevent the defendants from destroying evidence of illegal and unconstitutional spying that Montgomery turned over to Comey based on the promise that he was going to investigate all of this, which basically Comey didn't do anything. And we knew he wasn't going to do anything because all of these agencies, they're all involved in spying on the people, spying on government officials, spying on everyone, using it to blackmail whoever they can. Now, very interesting, and we mentioned this in past reports, where these unmasking documents, they move to Obama's library and they're sealed. But Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton, he's out there and he's saying that Trump has the ability to get these documents by simply requesting them. And I think at this point, this is what Trump should do. He should request them from the library, but we know exactly what's going to happen. They will get misplaced, they will get damaged, and they will disappear if he does do this. Now, I know it's something that he can do, but the question is, if he does do it, will we ever see these records? Now, U.S. intelligence officials, they have come out and they have said that there have been no votes changed because of Russia. Because remember, the whole case was that Russia hacked the elections. This is why Trump won. Now, they've come out and said, no, we can't find any evidence whatsoever that any of these votes have changed, which means there was no Russian hacking. Nothing ever even happened. This was created out of thin air to make everyone believe that this was what was happening. Now, of course, Trump was out there and he was going crazy today about this, and he was tweeting, under Obama administration, if they knew they were hacking, why didn't they stop this? Why didn't they do anything? And of course, basically, they were going to use it to their advantage, because if they saw the popular vote, and remember, it's not the Electoral College, it's the popular vote. Who won the popular vote? Well, Clinton did. Well, we know it was done illegally. We know there were a lot of illegal immigrants that were brought in, and that is why. But let's just go with the number where she won the popular vote, which the corporate media is continually telling us that she did win this. And we can see that they were going to use the Russian hacking if Trump was leading in the popular vote. If he was leading in the popular vote, they would have used the Russian hacking case at that point, saying that the entire election was being hacked. They were prepared and ready to do this, but it didn't happen. The opposite actually happened. So they couldn't really use it. They used it afterwards, but again, it was meaningless at that point in time, because the Electoral College, well, they meet at a certain period of time at different times and they make their decisions. So Russia would never really have any type of control over those individuals. Now, After the shooting of Scalise, we see there are Republican lawmakers out there saying that, government officials, they should be able to carry a gun to protect themselves. Now, think about this for a second. Celebrities, politicians, they have bodyguards. These bodyguards carry weapons. And here we have this shooting, and now these different congressmen, specifically Congressman Mo Brooks, who survived the recent shooting in Virginia, said that we should be allowed to carry weapons everywhere because we're very important. Well, that means everyone should be able to carry weapons everywhere. And of course, the Second Amendment allows us to do this. Just because he is in government doesn't make him more important than anyone else in the U.S. And of course, celebrities, government officials, they like to use this as the case. Well, we're very important. That's why we need to do this. And you as a citizen, you're not that important. You don't need to do this. Well, everyone's life is important. And you just can't decide who can and who can't. That's why they didn't. The Second Amendment doesn't say celebrities, government officials, they're allowed to carry weapons. The rest of the people, tough luck on you. No, it was for everyone in the country. And we can see that, once again, one law for them, one law for the rest of the people. Now, as we can see, Venezuela, they are in a tight spot right now. And we can see there was a meeting of the Organization of American States in Cancun, Mexico. U.S. Deputy Secretary of State John Sullivan tried to rally support for a resolution to send regional mediators to Venezuela to create a plan to address Venezuela's crisis. And the Venezuela Foreign Minister, Delcy Rodriguez, well, he went kind of crazy. He's saying Venezuela is no humanitarian crisis. There are no political prisoners in Venezuela. The contact group you're proposing is completely useless and unnecessary. The only way you could impose it would be to send in your Marines, who would meet with a crushing response from Venezuela if they dared make such a misstep. We refuse to retreat from the United States. And we know what the deep state is doing in Venezuela. They've been doing it for a very long time. They're putting a lot of pressure. They want regime change. They want the natural resources in Venezuela. This is why there's such a big push. The entire goal of the deep state is empire building, regime change in each and every one of these countries. This is why we see regime change in Afghanistan, out in Iraq, Lebanon, Sudan. They're trying to do it in Syria. They had it in Ukraine. This is what their plan is, to take over basically all of these countries and many more, to have total control. Now, back in 2001, after 9/11, the deep state convinced us that we needed to go into Afghanistan. Now, we've been there ever since. And it's just amazing how we can't make any type of progress in Afghanistan. Now, we discussed this before. This is because they don't want progress made. This is where they grow the poppies. This is where they sell it across the ocean to pay for their covert operations. And we can see that they pump in a lot of funds from the U.S. government, and they take a lot of these funds. For instance, the Pentagon spent $93.8 million over the past decade to provide Afghan troops with uniforms of a forest camouflage pattern, which is largely unsuitable for Afghanistan's landscape. Why would they spend all of this money? The forest in Afghanistan only covers 2.1% of the total land area. So there was this report, a 17-page document, and it further estimates that the Pentagon wasted up to $28 million simply because it chose to buy the pattern from a private firm. Now, remember, all these funds going into Afghanistan to build these schools, to build these highways, none of this is being done. All of this is being funneled off into different people's pockets to pay for covert operations. And if you believe the official story that we're trying to win the battle against the Islamic State, we can take everything that the U.S. spent in Afghanistan, make up a list, find out, well, the schools weren't built, the roads weren't built, the weapons that were sent to Afghanistan, they disappeared. The money that was sent to Afghanistan disappeared. We're buying camouflaged uniforms for a desert type of landscape. So $90 million thrown out the window. So if we go with their official story of why we can't make any headway in Afghanistan, well, it's because the U.S. government has no idea what they're doing. But we know that this isn't the real reason. Of course, on the corporate media, everywhere else, they think, yes, we're fighting the Taliban, we're fighting the Islamic State. Yes, we're trying to take control of Afghanistan. No, they just keep moving the terrorists around. They never want this to end. They love this. A lot of money pours into it. The real reason is because all these terrorist groups, they're funded. These are paid mercenaries. They never want to leave Afghanistan. But we can see right now that all of this money that's being pumped into these different areas like Iraq, into Lebanon, into Libya, into Sudan, into Somalia, into Syria, most of this completely disappears, and a lot of it's funneled right into the paid mercenaries. Now we see that Poroshenko is out there, and he met with Trump, he met with Pence, and he's out there saying that Trump assured him that sanctions against Russia will be maintained. Now, again, according to Poroshenko, the sanctions will remain until the implementation of the Minsk agreements. Now, this really doesn't make sense because Tillerson was just out there stating that they want to rework all these sanctions and not have them linked to the Minsk agreement. So it looks like Poroshenko was just out there just repeating everything from the past. And we can see the Trump administration, they want to soften the sanctions against Russia. But we can see that the Senate, they want more sanctions. We can see the Treasury Secretary wants more sanctions. And we can see that the deep state, they still want to put a lot of pressure on Russia. You can see what's happening around the globe with all these provocations in the air where they're trying to push the idea that Russia's being very aggressive. They're flying their planes very close to the U.S. planes, and they're trying to make this case. Now, we know in the past the U.S. fired a ballistic missile. They intercepted it to show North Korea, listen, if you fire one at the U.S., we can shoot it down. Well, we have a major problem. An interceptor missile fired from the U.S. Navy destroyer off the coast of Hawaii failed to hit the target. Now, the failure follows last month's successful test where they knew exactly what missile it was, they knew the trajectory, they knew everything about it, and they were able to shoot it down. And we can see a medium-range ballistic missile was fired from the Pacific Missile Range facility in Hawaii. The destroyer, the USS John Paul Jones, tracked the missile with its onboard radar, part of the Aegis baseline system, and basically completely missed. And they couldn't hit the missile down. So we can see right now that things aren't going as well as everyone believes, because when we look at this, we see 8 out of the 18 tests of the GMD interceptor since 1999 have resulted in failure. The GMD array is deployed in Alaska and California with components made by Raytheon, Boeing, Grumman, and Orbital ATK, and we can see that the failure rate is very, very high. Now, Trump tweeted out that while we greatly appreciate the efforts of President Xi and China to help with North Korea, it has not worked out. At least I know China tried. Now, everyone believes that, he doesn't trust China. No, this was about trying to get the prisoners out of North Korea back into the States alive and maybe lead normal lives. And with the death of Otto Warmbier, well, again, China tried, but they weren't successful in doing that. Well, China, they've responded. China has played an important and constructive role in seeking peace on the Korean Peninsula. And Trump responded saying, no, China is still our friend and we're still working with them. So we can see that they're still planning to work with North Korea. We know North Korea has made a gesture of saying, listen, we will stop our nuclear program. We just have a couple of conditions, and we will have to see how the United States reacts to what North Korea is. Now, we see Macron met with Putin, and they were discussing the terrorist groups. discussing Assad. And we know that the Islamic State right now, they're beaten. Al-Qaeda, all the Western nations, they realize that there's no way to get around this. This is why they don't care about them anymore. This is why Macron is out there saying, yes, Russia and France, they should work together to go after the terrorists, because they don't need them right now. They're in the process of splitting up Syria. That's their main agenda right now. And we can see that he's saying that France, well, they would work with Russia and help get the terrorists. But the problem is France is still involved with the U.S. coalition, and they would have to maybe break off and work with Russia, because right now Russia is not working with the coalition to go after the terrorists. So yes, it's great to say out in public, and it sounds fantastic, but let's see the actions. That we haven't seen. And it sounds fantastic when both leaders are talking. Now, Russia is out there, and they are saying that it's very likely that they have killed the Islamic State leader, Baghdadi. Now, there are many reports in the past saying that Baghdadi was killed, a couple hundred times already, and the Russian officials added that the information is now verified through various channels that, yes, he has died. And we'll have to wait to see if he turns up someplace else. If not, maybe he has died. Now, what's very interesting is that Tulsi Gabbard went to Syria, spoke to the people, realized that the United States was arming, funding these terrorist groups. So Tulsi Gabbard created a bill, H.R. 608, Stop Arming Terrorist Acts. And it was introduced by her on January 23rd of this year. Now, the bill doesn't have any crazy strings attached, and its original co-sponsors are a mix of Republicans, Democrats, highlighting that it transcends party lines. The text of the bill is very simple. It merely states that it prohibits the use of federal agency funds to provide covered assistance to Al-Qaeda, Al-Sham, the Islamic State, or any individual or group, the government of any country, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence determines has, within the most recent 12 months, provided covered assistance to such a group or individual. The only thing this bill does is prohibit the U.S. government from giving money and weapons to people who want to murder Americans and who do murder innocent men, women, and children across the globe. Now, this is one of the simplest, straightforward, rational bills ever. And it was proposed to Congress back in January 23rd. Guess what? There's like no sponsors. Nothing. Nobody even wants to look at it. Senator Rand Paul introduced this same legislation in Senate, and he has 0 co-sponsors. This tells us exactly what these government officials are really doing, what their real agenda in government is. Because if they're truly worried about terrorism and they want to stop the terrorists, this is a bill they should have jumped on to show the American people they are against terrorism. But there's silence, crickets, nothing. This tells you that all of these groups, all these individuals, well, they're part of the problem. Their true agenda is not to stop the terrorists. Their true agenda is to continue everything the way it is and to overthrow country after country after country. Because when we look at government, they're supposed to be working for the people. But our government is not. They're corrupt. They're not working for the people. So we can see their true agenda. And this is why, when the system comes down and we're rebuilding our country, hopefully without the central bank, we need to get rid of most of the government. Now, most likely, most of them will be arrested once the system starts to come down, the truth starts to come out, and we start to realize what they're really up to. Remember, a lot of these government officials, they are controlled by the central bank, by corporations, by other countries, and most are probably involved in the peddle ring. So when the truth finally comes out, most of these individuals will probably be arrested, and if not, they need to step down, because we don't need them there if they're not working for the people. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.